Hello, my name's Liane Hambly. I'm co-author of Creative Career Coaching with Kira Bomford, and today I'm going to talk about what is career guidance. It's a big topic, so I won't do it justice, but just some food for thought, some ideas that'll hopefully provoke further discussion. The penguins will become apparent as we go on, the relevance of those. Okay, so questions we're going to explore. In the UK, we talk about IAG, Information, Advice and Guidance. So we're going to look at how does information advice relate to guidance. And then there are other terms out there, career counselling, career coaching. What's their relationship to guidance? In England, we have the difference between guidance and personal guidance. So I'll just touch on that briefly. And then once we understand what it is, we need models and we need structures and processes to inform what we do. So I'll look at those. We're going to kick off with what is career guidance. And this is a funny term, career. And there are various sort of ways of understanding it. Traditionally, very much seen as a ladder or a straight road. You chose what you wanted to be, you worked out the routes to get there, and then it was quite linear. I'm not quite sure it was ever like that for everybody, but definitely the professions. And maybe that's why some people say, I don't want a career, I just want a job. But maybe the misty path, the roller coaster, the scaffolding where you go sideways, downwards, back up. Hopefully not so much a sort of hamster on a wheel, but maybe sometimes it feels like that. And the road with all its twists and turns and roundabouts. Maybe the modern career needs a different metaphor than the ladder. And so if we look at our definitions, the ladder was very much reflected in traditional definitions. And career was seen as paid work, and as I said, a profession. Whereas for a long time now in the career development field, we talk about learning and work, and not just paid work, unpaid work, voluntary work, community activities, and informal learning experiences. Much wider definition. And not a definition so much as, again, another metaphor, the idea that it's more crazy paving. That it looks very messy at sometimes, but when you look back, you can see the pattern. And the key point there as well is that you're in charge. You have to have a lot more agency nowadays. You have frequent decisions. You have to take control. That ladder or that escalator won't take care of it for you. Okay, so behind the definitions, what does career support look like? And I've used the word support there because it sort of encompasses all of those terms: information, advice, guidance, counselling, coaching. What does it look like? And again, many years ago, hopefully many years ago, though I'm sure it's still out there, this idea that somehow career professionals are going to match you to jobs. And they have this amazing ability, a bit like Harry in Harry Potter, the sorting hat. They can ask you a few questions and then make a recommendation as to what career you should go into. We obviously don't do that. And computer-aided guidance programs, whilst called matching programs, they don't do it either. They give you food for thought. So, I think people expect them to come up with the right answer, and that's not the case really. So really, hopefully, I know lots of people think we match, but we don't. And that was very much seen, if you look at this directive, non-directive continuum, that kind of support, very much in that directive side, where, it was seen, as I said, that the careers advisor, the career practitioner would tell people what to do. Now, we do work all the way along that continuum. There are some things we have to tell clients, such as deadlines and things. But generally, we try and be as non-directive as possible. And even if we're giving advice, it is very much food for thought. We're not really telling them what to do. They might be suggestions and very tentative. And generally, we don't really give advice until the client wants it, is ready, has asked for it. And we make sure it's backed by evidence and information. So in terms of advice and information, they do sit a little bit more down in that directive area, but as I said, we're still very tentative about it and very careful about it. We try and be in the non-directive side as much as possible. That's much more empowering and enabling. And definitions of coaching and counselling obviously lie much more down there. So let's have a look at those in a little bit more detail. Guidance is seen as an umbrella term. Now, this is one way of looking at it. So the Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development, the OECD, defines it as an umbrella term for all of those elements. So it's a funny word because guidance sounds like it's down the advice area, but actually a guidance practitioner can work all the way along that continuum. They can use counselling skills, coaching models, and also, when needed, provide information and advice. So remembering that umbrella term. So within that umbrella, as I said, we can use career counselling skills. Elements of it, because sometimes, I mean, if you look at career counselling, it's often seen as ongoing, and a lot of time career practitioners don't have the luxury of working over time with somebody. But they do draw on the psychological theory that informs career counselling. So understanding the neuropsychology of how the brain works, how people learn, how decisions are made, and the importance of that relationship. And that's within those communication skills. It's not just the deep listening and the empathy, but the other core conditions of, unconditional regard and congruence. So, those of you who call yourself guidance practitioners or coaching will recognise the overlap here, even if you don't see your client for more than one session. And then we have Al-Rumani and Nag Al-Rumani's definition, which I think shows that it's much more holistic. So it promotes well-being and it looks at the relationship. We don't separate career out from people's well-being. Classic model there, Ali and Graham. So how about career coaching? Well, it's not a unified field either. So there are different sort of approaches, and some are very focused on goal setting and action planning and achieving goals. But there's also a critique within the field about the sort of over-focus on goal setting and really sometimes losing sight of the learning process. So it is about self-development and learning. And there are some classic coaching models out there. Grow, people are often familiar with. Clear, often people are less familiar with that. And funnily enough, Clear is probably a little bit more akin to some of the models we know. So if you want to know more about those, just have a look. As I said, it's not a unified field. There are different schools in coaching. Life coaching, very facilitative, no advice and information, agenda set by the client, and the coach doesn't need expertise in the area being coached. But have a look at performance coaching, because I think that's a little bit more along our lines of what we do. In other words, it recognises that clients don't necessarily always understand the process, and so the agenda is negotiated. Clients may come with unrealistic expectations or limited expectations of us, so we have to raise those expectations. And the coach does have expertise. They have expertise in career management. So the client's in charge of the decisions and the choices, but we bring our knowledge and our understanding of effective career management and all the theory and research behind that into play. Okay, so very brief overview. Aside from the skills, what actually happens? So let's have a little bit more of a look at the processes and what it looks like, what actually goes on in a career guidance session. Well, here we come into the iceberg. This metaphor has long been used, and it's a great metaphor. It's used in so many different ways, but it's because the tip of the iceberg is usually only a third or a little bit of the iceberg. And when we first meet a client and they tell us what they want from us, that's all we see, tip of the iceberg. Below the iceberg is their story. So the tip of the iceberg we call presenting needs, and quite often clients ask for very practical things like information, help with CV and job search. And yet we know, and this is where our research and our theories come in, there's an awful lot more going on underneath that iceberg. Some of the key things that impact on somebody's ability to navigate, career decision making and transition. The mindset, absolutely critical. The level of optimism, the level of belief in their own capabilities, so self-efficacy, even things like, their resilience, all of those kind of things. Growth mindset, or whether they've got a fixed mindset. So there's a few authors there you can have a look at if you want to understand more about the research there, but very pivotal. Also, decision-making styles. There are different styles out there, and there's no one style that's more effective than another. I'll say a little bit more about that in a minute. So how do we need to understand how our client is making decisions, what's impacting on their decisions, and whether it's working for them or not. Whether there's some other decision-making approaches that might help. Structural constraints, where they live, the school that they've attended, transport, also the neurodiversity, all that issue is in there, the notion of fit and how people fit the structures, and whether we need to, challenge some of those structures to produce a greater fit. Constructs. So how people see themselves and how they see the opportunities, and how those constructs are formed through life experience and through what people observe and what they've been exposed to. But for them, that will be their reality. And sometimes those constructs need to be gently challenged and expanded and informed. Network. Critical, again, who you know. So your network, who opened doors, we know that a lot of jobs and opportunities aren't advertised. So have they got the network that's going to help them? And if not, how do we help them with it? So you can see there the idea of the toolkit. So in the process, we will be exploring that story and finding out not just their presenting needs, but other high leverage needs. By high leverage, the things that have the biggest impact on their ability to move forward. And in finding that story, we also need a toolkit for helping them with it. And there you have, some of the things that career practitioners are trained in. Some of them will be continuous professional development. But, so we're always expanding our toolkit. So motivational approaches, cognitive behavioural coaching, solution-focused coaching, motivational interviewing, positive psychology, different decision-making tools, and self-awareness tools, and ways of increasing self-awareness, networking, mapping their network, gently challenging. That's a real skill, is to gently challenge myths and assumptions about themselves and about options. And I don't have all the information in my head. I'd be out of date. I have very little information. I know where to look. And so with them, we jointly research, and in doing so, develop their information management and research skills. So that's the kind of toolkit that we have. In terms of England, guidance can be done in groups, is seen as, and also, classrooms, and they call that, so the one-to-one guidance they call personal guidance, okay? And that's what takes place in the personal guidance session. But there you have a very simple way of looking at it. Presenting situation and presenting needs, tip of the iceberg. If we just do their CV for them and give them information, we're in advice and information. Once we go deeper to understand the story and look at the high leverage needs and recontract to address those, then we're into the guidance zone. Okay, and of course there's a bit of blurring between those, but that's a way of looking at it. How do I communicate that to clients? Because I can't say, can I go below the iceberg and find your high leverage needs? This is, you might gather by now, I like metaphors and analogies. This is one that I use. And of course here I've done it for you, but I put it in their language. It's the idea that at the moment they're on one side of the river, their current situation, wherever that is, and their feelings about it, and also any ideas they've got. That's where they are now. The other side, the other riverbank, is the future. and we're looking at them having made a decision or being whatever, we call them broad outcomes, whatever actually relates to them. Perhaps it might be feeling more confident, feeling happier in what they're doing something more worthwhile. We want to increase their chances. So sometimes we use prompt cards to help them choose, what they want to work towards. And in between there are the stepping stones to get there. And the CV and the information, those kind of things, they're only a couple of the stepping stones. There's so much more that we need in place to effectively get to the other side. And so, as I said, I would put that in their language, but I'm basically saying to them, if I only give you the information and we don't see what else will help you get across, I'm not giving you the best service I could offer. This is also useful for sharing with other agencies and other people, so they understand a little bit more about what we do. But obviously, in order to find out what's going to get them across to the other side, I need to spend much more time understanding their thoughts, their feelings, their constructs, their mindset, their decision-making style, their level of self-awareness. I need to understand that story below the iceberg. And to do this, I need a model. I need some structure to what I do. I'm a professional. We are professionals. We need to have some professional processes in place to make sure we're ethical and we're informed. And there's a lot of models out there to help us. The skeleton, really, that a model shouldn't be a script. It shouldn't be so rigid that you can't tailor it to the person. So it provides you with the bare bones. Every time you see a new client, you've got to put the flesh on it. So it's a bit gruesome, that, isn't it? But you've got to put the flesh on it to make it come alive and be real for that person. So I've mentioned Grow, Clear, Ali and Graham. Just Egan Skilled Helper, that's a very, very popular one with career practitioners. And indeed, it's basically finding out what's going on for the client, finding out what their preferred vision of a future would be, and then working out how to get there. So again, have a look at Egan's model if you want more information on that. This is the model that Kira Bomford and myself use, and basically I teach it quite a bit, and it's informed a lot of practice in the UK. I should say 2019 there, my face is in the way. It basically builds on Egan, and it draws on other good, other models that are out there. So it's not mind-blowingly different from a lot of the other models. But basically there you have your 3 stages. At the beginning, you need those foundations. You need the relationship. We don't call them ground rules with the client, but things like confidentiality and the nature of the working relationship. And this negotiated purpose. Why are they there? What can they get out of it? What more can I offer than what they're expecting? Stage 2 is the exploration below the iceberg, and then recontracting, finding out what stepping stones are already in place, which ones actually need to be worked on, recontracting around that. And then stage 3, addressing needs and moving forward. You can see the arrows so that your flexibility is there, and there'll be different ways of achieving this with different clients. And indeed, this may be done in a series of bite-sized chunks over time. So if we map that to some coaching models, you can see they're quite easily mapped. So there's the Grow, and there's the Clear model, which I think is a little bit closer to our practice. Contracting, listening, exploration, identifying action, and then reviewing, and then going round the cycle again if you see them. Okay, and Egan definitely in that sort of stage 2, understanding the story. Where are they now? Where do they want to be? And stage 3, how are they going to get there? So we need that contracting stage at the beginning. Okay, so done quite a bit there in terms of what we'll explore. As I said, very much a sort of whistle-stop tour and an introduction to some of the ideas and models that are out there, but by no means comprehensive. So there are some references. As I said, this is really to promote further discussion. So you've got there some of the ones that I've mentioned. Actually, I didn't mention Stuart from the CDI. Sorry, it should say CDI, not CGI. But that's why it's references and further reading. So that's a really good recent paper on understanding the role of the careers advisor within personal guidance in England, if you're in England. Okay, so that's all I wanted to cover. I hope that was useful. And if this is leading on to further webinars, then I look forward to seeing you where we unpick this in a lot more detail.